Hello everyone, today we will be teaching about the Byzantine Empire, which lasted from 330 to 1453 CE. Before the Byzantine Empire, the Roman Empire existed in Europe, the Middle East, and parts of northern Africa. The Romans were extremely powerful and wealthy due to the success of control of the Mediterranean basin and interconnected Roman roads that spread throughout their land. The Mediterranean basin was filled with sea trade from regions all around their empire. The Romans were able to become wealthy and maintain their wealth over control of the Mediterranean. These Roman roads helped the Romans mobilize armies, travel without losing direction, and trade over land.
During the 5th century, Germanic invasions from the east attacked the Roman Empire and brought the fall of the western half of the empire. The eastern half would continue to survive as the Byzantine, although they still identified themselves as Romans. However, the Byzantine had lost much of their territory and influence over Europe. The western half dissolved, but it continued its Christian influence in Western Europe. Constantine was the founder of Constantinople, which was in the eastern Mediterranean region that was the richest part of the Roman Empire. It was also conveniently located next to the Strait of Bosporus, which provided the Byzantine with passage to the Mediterranean basin to trade. He also ended the persecution of Christians and in 313 announced the Edict of Milan, which allowed freedom of worship of Christianity. Later in the 4th century, Theodosius made Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire.
Arguably the strongest of the Byzantine emperors, Justinian came to rule in 527 to 565. During Justinian's reign, he sought to regain control of lands of the Western Roman Empire that had fallen to outside invaders. Commanding his general Belisarius, Justinian was able to take back control over land in Italy, Sicily, northwestern Africa, and southern Spain. One of the many great achievements of Justinian during his reign was the building of the Hagia Sophia. Its magnificent dome was filled with gold, silver, gems, and light that illuminated the structure. This grand monument was testament to Christianity and the wealth of Constantinople.
Justinian was well known for writing the Corpus Juris Civilis, also known as the Justinian Code, which helped to codify all Roman law. This code lasted 900 years after its creation, speeding up court processes and reducing the number of cases needed with precise and fair laws. Justinian's code served later as a reference for governments like the United States. Constantinople was also called the City of Baths, where baths were made open to the public.
That's right, you heard me. Makes bathing the best way to relax.
Restaurants, taverns, and theaters were also prominent as places of social entertainment. People in their free time often went to the Hippodrome for entertainment. The Hippodrome was a stadium for the masses to enjoy holding events like chariot racing, animal fights, and circus acts. Over time, rivalry developed between opposing teams that resulted into bloody conflict in the streets between the Greens and the Blues. The act of crossing over into green or blue territory could result in fighting between the two sides.
The Byzantine were able to come up with new inventions to increase the speed of production of cultivation. They invented the heavy plow, which in addition to the light Mediterranean plow, had iron tips and a mold board that made it easier to cut through the ground for cultivation. The light wooden plow was largely ineffective against breaking the surface of the soil and hacking at weeds. However, the heavy plow required much more energy to pull through the ground and was more expensive than the wooden plow. But with the use of oxen or horses, the heavy plow was much faster in cultivating the land for each year's harvest. The Byzantine also cleared more land to farm, built ponds, water mills, and developed horse collars. Beans became more common within Byzantine diets.
Starting from the time of the Silk Roads, China had been the only supplier of high-quality silk made from silkworms for clothing that became very valuable. China's monopoly of the silk trade ended when the Byzantine began to produce silk as well. Byzantine merchants smuggled silkworms from China back to the Byzantine Empire along with mulberry leaves. They bred these silkworms, and soon the Byzantine also too produced silk to trade throughout the Mediterranean basin. The Byzantine became wealthy from this trade as competitors with the Chinese.
In medieval Europe, the formation of guilds was widespread with the rise and specialization of labor. Specialization of labor was the turn towards industry that did not include agricultural work. Guilds worked on their own specific industry and often included men and women in the workplace. They regulated the quality and production of manufactured goods to sell in the market. Guilds also held parties and banquets that provided friendship between the guild members. Byzantine craft workers were especially known for their work with gold, silver, woolen textiles, glassware, and jewelry.
The Byzantine had a long history of producing religious icons, which were religious paintings and images depicting Jesus and other holy people like saints. These religious icons were thought to inspire homage to these holy persons. However, in the early 8th century, ruler Emperor Leo III began the banning of icons, which he believed were sinful and unworthy of devotion. In 726, he began the policy of iconoclasm, destroying these icons and prohibiting their uses in churches. His policy started riots from the peasants who were fond of these icons. Iconoclasm was later abandoned by Leo's followers in 843.
Lords often supported retainers or peasants with land in which the workers provided their services in return. Retainers worked under their lords and payments were often given in forms of portions of harvest. These peasants did not get much of a chance to move to different lands with the need of the lord's permission to move. Lords were able to abuse the peasant class who needed financial support to live upon the lord's lands. Peasants made up most of the population, which made them easily replaceable in case they refused to work under their lords.
Religious tensions between the churches in Rome and Constantinople stemmed from the beginning of the 7th century. Over time, doctrines or religious laws began to develop differences in interpretation between the two churches that affected their views on relationships between God and Jesus. Eventually, the two churches argued over the powers of the clergy or Christian officials, which strained their relationships even further. In 1054, the Church of Rome and the Church of Constantinople excommunicated and refused to recognize the other group as Christian. This schism between the two groups split into the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church. The schism continues on today. In 1095, Pope Urban II urges European princes to recapture Jerusalem and restore Christianity to the land with this famous quote, "Duis Vult," in which would later be known as the Crusades. The Crusades were a series of wars to recapture the birthplace of Christianity in Jerusalem for Muslim authorities. The First Crusade ended in quick victory for the Europeans, in which they rejoiced happily. Later Crusades were inspired by this holy war to fight for Christianity, but did not end with success. In 1187, Jerusalem was recaptured by the Muslims, leading to a demoralizing defeat for the Europeans. The Crusades ended in failure without reaching their goals. But because of the Crusades, the Europeans were able to interact with the Muslims through trade and cultural exchange. In the long run, the Crusades were beneficial to the Byzantine. However, by the 1440s, the Ottomans had begun invasion of the Byzantine Empire. In 1453, Sultan Mehmed II captures the city of Constantinople and ends Byzantine rule. He renamed the city Istanbul as the capital of the Ottoman Empire. After the 8th century, Byzantine society was ruled by the theme system, which put a general under the position to provide military defense as well as administration to a province called a theme. These generals received their power from the emperor and were kept in close check to make sure the generals were not planning to overthrow the emperor. These generals gave free peasants the chance to gain land in exchange for their loyalty to the military. Theme system armies were extremely effective since they were so loyal to the generals who gave them land to live upon. From the successful Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire emerged as the eastern portion of the Roman Empire. Constantine I created the city of Constantinople as the capital of the Byzantine Empire, which Justinian complements with the building of the Hagia Sophia to show the capital's magnificence. Justinian codified Roman law, and under his general Belisarius is able to take back control of Western European land once part of the Roman Empire. Byzantine involvement in the Mediterranean basin helped their empire grow financially with resources needed to continue expansion. They formed guilds that generally admitted men and women working together in the same industry and held parties at the guilds to help socialize the members. Another way to socialize in Constantinople was to visit the Hippodrome, where the Byzantines watched chariot races and other events. Baths, taverns, and restaurants were open to the public. Under the theme system, generals governed and defended provinces and were extremely successful in conquest. In 1095, Crusaders attacked Jerusalem in hopes of returning Christianity to the land and preventing Muslim influence. Religious dispute did not always lead to warfare like in the Schism of 1054 or the destroying of religious images on the policy of iconoclasm. In the mid-15th century, the Ottomans attacked the Byzantine Empire and under Sultan Mehmed II captures the city of Constantinople. He renamed the land Istanbul, glorifying its Turkish name as the capital of the Ottoman Empire. The Byzantine had fallen, but their political and cultural influence are still felt in our world today.